Hey family, this is Pastor Andre Osborne, and this is day 3 of our Passion Week devotional. Of course, we've been focusing intently on the 7 days that changed everything. Of course, you and I are coming to realize that a lot can change in 7 days. Today, we're focusing in on what's been called a Silent Wednesday. It's labeled Silent Wednesday because in all 4 Gospels, there is little to no activity in the camp of Jesus. Most scholars believe this is because Jesus is taking restful reprieve in preparation for the Passover, which would become the Last Supper, his night of prayer in Gethsemane, his impending arrest and trial, and his crucifixion. But while there is little to no activity in the camp of Jesus, there is much activity in the camp of his enemies. This would be the day that the scribes, the chief priests, the Pharisees, and Sadducees now all conspired together along with Judas Iscariot, who has agreed to betray Jesus into their hands. Now, this is an amazing thing. You've got to think about it. The Pharisees are ultra religious. They've created 700 more laws in order to keep their adherents in line with the law of Moses. And so these are ultra purists, ultra religious people concerned about religious cleanliness. And in contrast with the Sadducees, who are secularists, they've adopted the ways of Rome. They've adopted Greek culture, and they aren't strict adherents to the law of Moses. And so the Pharisees and the Sadducees are in opposition. Combine this with Judas Iscariot, who represents a group called the Zealots. The Zealots are a group of Jews that are preoccupied with throwing off Roman oppression and Roman rule at any cost. These 3 groups do not get along. And we know Judas is a zealot because of his last name, Iscariot. And that last name, Iscariot, actually means dagger man. And it goes along the lines of the fact that zealots often carried a dagger in case they had to execute a traitor. And so he is literally Judas, dagger man. And so here we have the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the chief priests, along with Judas, the dagger man, who have all come together in concert because of one thing: we've got to get rid of Jesus. The chief priests know that if they're going to maintain their standing with Rome and with the people, they've got to get rid of Jesus because their influence is waning. Now, isn't that amazing when people who don't even like each other come together against you because of what God is doing in your life? Well, that's the story of Jesus right here at this point. Judas Iscariot asked this amazing question. He comes to the chief priest and he says, I know you've been looking for an opportunity against Jesus. I will deliver him to you. What will you give me in exchange? This is an amazing question. What will you give me in exchange for Jesus? I had to turn that question around and ask Judas, what would you take in exchange for Jesus? Because just a few chapters back in John's gospel, we see a woman named Mary at the house of her brother Lazarus, who comes into this banquet and lays this expensive ointment that had been in an alabaster box on the feet of Jesus. She breaks the flask and spills all the oil on his feet. And then she cries these tears that wash his feet. And she takes down her hair and dries his feet. And she says, Jesus, you are worth, here it is, 300 days' wages. That's how much this expensive ointment was worth. And the main person who had a problem with her display of fidelity, of love, of joy at Jesus being present there is Judas Iscariot. John tells us Judas had a problem. He said this money could have been used for something else. And now here it is, just a few chapters later, he is selling Jesus for 30 pieces of silver. 30 pieces of silver in opposition or in contrast with a year's wages. We see that Judas has a valuation problem. And this is perhaps why he's able to take just 30 pieces of silver in exchange for Jesus. I couldn't help but look at Judas and say, I've taken much less. I've taken my own desires in exchange for Jesus. I've taken my own hang-ups in exchange for Jesus having a central place in my life. And I want to ask you, have you ever made an exchange of Jesus for some fleshly desire, something that was temporal? I think the text is tailored to teach us that Jesus is so valuable that there ought not be anything that we aren't willing to lay down in exchange for having the joy of Jesus here with us. Well, Jesus is betrayed into their hands. Judas agrees, I'll deliver him to you for just 30 pieces of silver. It's amazing that Judas Iscariot, the dagger man, the one who carried a dagger to eliminate traitors, would himself be guilty of treachery. As a matter of fact, the scriptures would say he would go back to the chief priests begging pardon and asking them to take the money back. Judas had guilt because he realized he had betrayed innocent blood. The dagger man, the one who was to eliminate traitors, becomes a traitor. And yet it is not with a dagger that he betrays Jesus. No, in the garden, it would be with a kiss. That goes to show us that every kiss isn't a friendly kiss. Some kisses are from loving endearment, and yet others are just to get close enough to see where to put the knife in. This is Pastor Andre Osborne, and I'll see you tomorrow with another day in Passion Week.